karanasan ko po, di na ba nakasalanan ng dito?
Media educators are very called to defend press freedom.
This corruption in media will be reduced to
Good evening. You're watching News Cafe on the Solar News Channel. I'm Jing Magsaysay. Tonight, we're joined by Attorney Reggie Hilarbal, officer in charge of the KBP, and he's one of the top honchos at Manila Broadcasting Corporation. Reggie, good evening. Thanks for joining me.
Good evening, June.
Well, two hats. You're wearing two hats, no?
Yes.
KBP and Manila Broadcasting Corporation. How do they complement?
Well, KBP is composed of broadcast networks. So when I am with the KBP, I have to think on the general broadcast industry.
Okay.
As Manila Broadcasting, I'm of course focused on the operations of the radio station that I manage, which is DZRH.
DZRH is a name that goes way, 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 way back. I was part of Manila Broadcasting some years back, and I still remember being part of that company. And how long have you been with Manila Broadcasting?
I've been with Manila Broadcasting since 1986, Jing.
Okay.
Matagal-tagal na yun.
The revolution?
Right after.
Right after the revolution.
Yes.
And I was in NBC around 1990, I believe.
Yes, with Love Radio.
1980. 1980.
Which is with
1984,
Love Radio,
Love
right?
Radio,
Yes.
DZMB. And you've been through all the elections since then, Reggie. How does DZRH cover an election?
We've been covering elections the usual way since the 80s. No, we of course deploy our reporters,
Right.
and then we have support also from Operation Tulong volunteers.
Okay.
And until 2001, we used to get the results also and tally them ourselves and come up with our tally together with NAMFREL, etc. Until in 2001, where we changed strategy and we wanted to emphasize the ability of our network to cover practically the whole Philippines. And so we shifted from the usual quick count to the exit polls.
Okay.
And we are, so far, the broadcast network that does exit polls.
Okay. For the sake of our public, no, of our viewers, what are exit polls?
Well, exit polls is the means by which you get from those who just finished voting. You interview them and ask them if, as long as they're willing to answer your questionnaire, which is in effect just like a ballot. They're interviewed and they tell you who they voted for while they were in the polling place. And those are tallied also, but in the context of a survey. We do not get 100%, but we get a sample base. And we project that to a national level result.
Okay, that sounds like a nutshell explanation. No? Let's go into more detail. When you say you talk to the person who voted, when do you approach the person who voted? Right after the person voted?
Yeah, our interviewers are instructed to position themselves outside of the polling places, beyond the 50-meter prohibited zone.
Okay, and since most of the polling places are schools, no?
Yes.
So your interviewers are positioned from the gate of the school, 50 meters from that gate.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you tell the voters, are they pre-chosen?
No, that would be a violation of the sampling method. So they have to do it randomly.
Okay.
And we tell them, they start with 1, 2, 3. They ask that third individual whether they're willing to be interviewed. Of course, you have to determine from the marking on the ink, yes, that they have voted. And if they're willing, they're given a interview sheet. If they're not, then you get into the next 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, ganon.
How many, on the average, how many voters do you get per polling place? Because we're not talking about precincts, no?
Yes.
We're talking about polling places.
About 80. about 80 voters. The polling centers are chosen also randomly.
Okay.
So everything is random, except that we represent or we get samples from all provinces. So there's no need to randomly determine which province we will conduct a survey. We cover all provinces.
Okay.
And then from the provinces, we do random determination of which
Polling
polling
place.
center. Yes, that's by.
So you don't base your selection on the size of the polling center.
No, we don't. It has to be random.
And if you're covering 80 provinces, how many polling centers in each province?
We are covering for provincial, other than Metro Manila, we are covering 399 polling centers.
This is in all the 80 provinces?
Yes.
And you get 80 on the average?
Yes, per polling center.
80 voters per
Yes.
polling center. How long have you been doing this?
We've been doing this.
DZRH?
We've been doing this since the 2001 election.
2001.
Yes.
And how have your results been since the first time you tried it?
Except, well, for the president, we always hit it.
Okay.
Vice president, there was one instance when we, it was Lauren Legarda and
Noli de
Noli
Castro.
Castro.
2004.
Yes. Our exit poll showed Lauren Legarda, and we declared it as such. And for senators, it's the 11-12 down, which statistically insignificant na yung, so we announced up to the 15th.
Okay.
12 to 15, because
Okay.
it can be the positions 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, masyadong close yung difference.
In 2004, when you announced that Lauren Legarda won the vice presidency, and well, Noli de Castro became vice president.
Yes.
We all know that. Did you get any reaction from any camp or the Commission on Elections?
Not
from
really.
any
Yes,
organization
of
or
course, it raised certain issues about how credible our survey is.
Who raised the issues?
Well, several quarters. Bakit ganyan? You'll
Okay.
get the. But the point is, that's how our exit polls came out, and
Yes.
we don't want to change the results of our
Yes.
exit polls. We have confidence in the manner by which we conducted it and
Correct.
the sampling. Our sample base, Jing, ranges from 20 to even 40,000. This time, 80 times 900 polling areas, 450 polling centers. And we have 2 interviewers getting 40 respondent each. So that's how big our sampling base is.
How do you train your interviewers, since they're all over the country?
We have our managers here in Metro Manila who we train, and they are right as we are talking right now. There are areas in the Philippines where our managers in the area are converging, and they are trained. Actually, we just reinforce it because they've been trained already for the past elections.
Okay.
And
You're
then,
using the same interviewers?
No, not 100%.
Okay.
But quite a number of them are the same interviewers, and so the new ones, we have to teach them how to conduct the interview and the procedure, the proper procedure.
Is it really as simple as standing outside the polling precinct and counting every third voter and just approaching? How has the reception been?
We have not encountered something serious. There are areas, for example, in Mindanao, where it's quite difficult. And sometimes on the day before the election, we get reports from our station managers that the randomly chosen area is not safe. So we have to pick out another area because we don't want to compromise the lives also of our interviewers.
Yes. Yeah.
So if we get adverse reports on the peace and order situation, we'll have to pick out a new area.
And how do you do, as soon as the interviewers get the information, the information is put in by the voter himself?
They fill up a
They fill up a form?
Yes,
Like filling up a ballot.
that's correct. Yeah, we make it as close as possible to the ballot.
After the voter fills up your form, what happens then?
Once the interviewer finishes 20 respondents, he has
Okay.
to tally it and make the report to the head office. In 2001, we had to rely on less sophisticated means, which was by fax. Then we call.
Right.
The interviewers bring the results to their coordinator. The coordinator tallies, and all of that. It's faxed, and then they ship the results to us. We get the original interview sheets for validation, but that would be the day after. But right now, for the past 3 elections, we had already made it more sophisticated. We have developed a system using the text platform, and the results are sent to DZRH head office.
And you used this in 2004?
2004, 2007, 2010.
2010.
Yes.
Didn't you have any problems in terms of transmission?
We have backup systems, Jing.
Okay.
While the primary mode is transmission, we have our call centers, and once we call out our interviewers and we ask them to give us a report via telephone, especially if we have not received a transmission.
And when the numbers come in to your how do you call it? Central command?
Yes,
Or,
yes, our call center area.
Okay.
Yes.
When the numbers come in, the numbers from SMS, do they go into a server?
Yes, they're processed,
Okay.
and there are automatic results that come from the processing.
Okay. Do you use a short number or a long number for your SMS messages?
Well, we have a format.
Okay.
It's where all the names have codes.
Okay.
And they input the results of the interviews.
Okay, we'll go into a short break. News Cafe will return after these reminders. You're still watching News Cafe on the Solar News Channel, and we're still joined by our guest, Attorney Reggie Hilarbal of DZRH, NBC, and the KBP. Reggie, thanks again for joining me on the program.
Thank you, Jim.
Like we were talking about before the break, the numbers go into your server, and you have a software. Do you develop your own software?
Yes, we developed our own software. We asked a group to develop it for us.
And what does the software do essentially?
The software processes the text message.
Okay.
It's in a predetermined syntax. And so it parses out the data on a per candidate basis. And they are slotted on the provinces, etc. So each interviewer has a very definite telephone number,
Right.
which is encoded in our system.
Right.
If a report comes in from a number that is not within the system, it's going to reject it.
Okay.
And so that's how we determine also where the results are coming from.
Yes.
And there's an automatic computation, but we have another backup system where it's revalidated.
And I guess you have securities in place as well.
Yes, we
for
have
the entire
securities in
system.
place.
And do you have a backup for your system?
Yes, we have a redundancy. Like I said, we call out the interviewees,
Okay.
the interviewers rather, and also when the results reach our coordinators, they fax the results. The interview sheets are
Yes.
faxed, or rather the tally
Yes.
is faxed, and the interview sheets are shipped to head office
So
immediately.
you have the originals
We have the
as well
original.
as the fax copies for backup.
Yes.
In case you have to do a manual count. So from the time that the numbers are transmitted to your head office here in Manila, there is no manual intervention in terms of the numbers.
On our main system, the manual intervention is the tally of the interviewer.
Okay.
And from then on, once it's inputted into the
System.
text system,
Yeah.
then there's no manual intervention.
And the system automatically collates all the numbers.
That's correct. And slots them according to the province and the polling centers where they come from.
In this particular election, on May 13, the polling places open at 7 a.m. and they close at 7 p.m.
Yes.
How soon, of course, you'll be operating throughout the day.
Yes, that's
You'll
correct.
start in the morning as soon as the
Polling
polling
centers open.
centers open. No? You have your interviewers on the ground
That's correct.
as early as 7 a.m.
As early as 6:30, they should be on their place already.
And are they instructed to get as many as they can? Or do they have quotas to
They
fill?
have a quota. Each interviewer has to get 40 respondents,
Okay.
preferably 20 in the morning and 20 in the afternoon.
Okay.
We have a designated time schedule where they do the interviews and they send the results. But all in all, it's supposed to be 40 per interviewer.
And you said you have 2 interviewers
Per polling center.
place.
A total of actually 900 interviewers.
900 interviewers, covering around 450.
450
Polling
polling places. 51 of them in Metro Manila and 399 in the provinces.
And you're confident that this is reflective of how the voter sentiment is on election day?
Yes, Jing, we're very confident. In fact, statistically, with a sample base of that magnitude, the margin of error is practically insignificant already.
When the polls close at 7 p.m., how soon after will you come out with your exit poll results?
Okay, we require our interviewers to send already their afternoon results between 3 to 4 in the afternoon.
Okay.
So they should be finished by then because we want them to get out of the area before dark comes in.
Okay, for their safety.
For their safety. We're actually ready at 7 o'clock.
So at exactly 7 o'clock, you're going to be announcing the results of your exit polls.
Yes, we do our traditional countdown.
Okay.
But even before that, we're ready. We're just refining, revalidating, and all of that. But 7 o'clock, just to follow the rules of the COMELEC, we announce after the polling places are closed.
And just for the information of our viewers, Solar News is partnering with DZRH for the coming elections. We're going to be signing a memorandum of agreement on all levels of coverage. And Solar News is also going to carry the results of the DZRH exit poll on the evening of May 13th. So that's going to be very interesting.
Yes, and
Reggie.
thank you for joining with us, Jing. We hope it's really, well, we are confident it's going to be a good tie-up.
Do you do surveys before the elections, Reggie?
We used to, but this time we opted not to do it. We have been doing about 2 surveys before the election, 2 to 3 surveys before the election.
Okay.
The last presidential election, and the next presidential election, we will be doing pre-election surveys.
What was your experience in the surveys of the past? The same methodology?
Yes,
Use
the same methodology. We have a smaller sample. We have a sample of about 20,000 respondents nationwide.
That's still pretty significant.
Yes,
because the usual survey
1,200.
1,200, yes,
Yes.
is the base.
We have about 20,000 per pre-election survey, and we've been pretty accurate, Jin. In fact, the last presidential election, we already saw the trend between Binay and Marrojas as early as February.
Okay.
Yes, and we also announced this during the pre-election, the results of our survey.
And of course, we're just talking about the exit polls right now, no? But a large part of the DZRH commitment and work is, of course, news reporting.
That's correct, Jim.
You have a huge network in the provinces, and it's not very easy to cover the elections in the provinces because of local elections. No, mainit yung local elections.
Totoo yan, Jing. It's the local election that's really hot, and like in the past few weeks, the national elections are pretty normal type of
Yes.
coverages.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the local elections, it can be very heated. Just like last night, there was an ambush in Lanao.
In Lanao, yes.
Yes, and that we got that report as early in the late in the afternoon. We got a report from our radio station in Lanao, Radyo Natin. We have a network that is municipal-based community radio stations. We have 130 of them all over the Philippines.
How many radio stations are there? You mentioned a number around 200?
Yes, more than 200, Jing. I think about 200, 210 stations on the air. We have more than that, but some we are now relocating, or on some we have put on hold.
Have you crossed the threshold into social media?
We have to, Jing. Radio has to evolve.
Everyone has to.
Yes, it's the way to adapt to the current climate or current circumstances. If you will notice, people nowadays, we've done we're trying to scan the market, and people are not as tuned in to radio as they were before. I mean, to say 24/7, they're stuck to their favorite station. Now there's so much. They have social media, they have their phone access and all of that. And so we have to adapt to that. And we have noticed from responses of our listeners that they get their initial feed from social media, like the Twitter, and then that's the time they tune into the station. But otherwise, they're not 24/7 on the station already.
You handle a huge network, Reggie, and a lot of people say that media in the Philippines is one of the freest in the world. We can practically say anything we want in
That's
this
correct,
country in
yes.
terms of media. No? But a lot of that has led to a lot of antagonism. A lot of politicians have been antagonized, a lot of people who are in illegal businesses have been antagonized, and a lot of journalists have been killed.
That's correct. Yes.
Because of this. So how do you protect your journalists?
That has been a problem that the KBP, I now put my hat as KBP, has been
KBP.
addressing for quite some time now. And it has always been the position of KBP that the best protection is ethical broadcasting.
Okay.
Especially in the provinces. If you'll notice the number of media killings or attacks on broadcast media, practically everything happened in the province. There's hardly an incident in Metro Manila.
Yeah.
The reason for that is in small communities, it's very personal. And once there is an attack on a person, it sticks in the community. It's something, it affects even the family. And so that is why we always tell our broadcast journalists to always practice fairness, get the side, etc. And we also notice that in a lot of instances, the black timers are the ones that are the subject of attack. And these are not mainstream broadcast journalists. Yes, these are those who buy airtime in order to air their program.
And more often than not, the block timers represent a particular
interest.
That's
correct.
Yeah, which is why they get into trouble.
Yes, that's why. Well, Manila Broadcasting, we have a policy that once the filing of candidacy is made, and we have a block timer that files his candidacy.
Yes.
A lot of block time programs in Manila Broadcasting are put off the air during election period.
How do you guard against the ethics in the provinces? No? How do you police your journalists, especially those that go on air?
We have been activating a lot of the KBP chapters. We have our annual updates and a training of our KBP officers, so that since they're on the front line, they're the ones that police their ranks in the provincial level.
Has there been any change in the way broadcast journalists have been treated in the past years? Has there been improvement in some areas? Kasi may mga pinapatay pa din.
Yes, but tama ka, Jing, no? There have been improvements because the KBP, for example, we really go to the provinces and lecture. I do lectures in the provinces on ethics. And we try to upgrade the professionalism in the provinces. And we believe that we have succeeded substantially in that area.
In a lot of places, people are paid very low salaries in the provinces now, in our industry. And how do you prevent envelopmental journalism in the provinces? Or is that preventable at all?
It's very difficult in the provinces, Jing. In fact, it's one of the things that we would like to address. Our chairman, Mr. Herman Basbanyo, has instituted a program of livelihood training of our journalists.
Productivity.
Yes, we train their wives on some economic activity so that it complements the income of the journalist or the family itself. And we hope that this should address the economic needs of our journalists and not go through the process of envelopmental journalism.
Well, Reggie, that's all the time we have. Thank you very much for joining the program. And we're looking forward to Election Day, working with you, working with DZRH. And we're looking forward to your exit polls.
Yes, that would be exciting this time. Thank you, Jing, for the opportunity, and more power to you.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank my guest, Attorney Reggie Hilarbal, who's with the KBP, and of course, who is with Manila Broadcasting and DZRH. Join us again next Friday for another 360-degree discussion here on News Cafe. I'm Jing Magsaysay. Salamat po.